This is the Football Daily Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Football Daily. I'm Mark Chapman. Ian Wright, Chris Sutton and Jason Burt are with us. We're going to be chatting about whether Brendan Rodgers' Leicester could beat the Claudio Ranieri version, as well as discussing the weekend's VAR decisions. I suppose, Ian, there's only one place to start, and that is with Graint Xhka and everything that happened. We'll do VAR later as well, in case you were wondering. Amy Lawrence wrote in The Athletic today that Xhka was visited at home last night after the game by three senior Arsenal players to check on him. Does that surprise you?
No, especially when it's now 24 hours after everything's what's gone on. It's all transpired. We're finding out exactly what's going on, and with Xhka behind the scenes and stuff like that. No, it doesn't surprise me that he's got the backing of some of his teammates. But what we've got to understand is that in isolation, when you watched Xhka coming off, we're talking about, Arsenal giving up a 2-goal lead. He didn't play particularly well. People were kind of blaming him a bit for the second goal. He's somebody that he does split opinion in respects of the Arsenal fans. He's somebody that the manager is got total faith in, where people may not see it. And yesterday I think was when we watched him come off and do what he did. The fans, let's face it, from the fans, and you never want to see a player getting booed. And the fact is, he was coming off, and for the fans, he was coming off too slowly. Chappers, I've seen him come off before, and I've seen him rush off. But then what you got to do is, yes, and then he done what he done, and then we saw the mouthing, the expletives and whatever. But then you have to rewind it like one of them films. If it goes blank and then you go back in time a bit, and you have to think of everything what's happening with Xhka. You're hearing about threats that he's had to his family, threats to his missus, all this sort of stuff. All that sort of thing that happens with a 2019 footballer in the current climate. And then you go back to him coming off the pitch with the fans' frustrations and everything what's happened. He came out against Watford and saying that the team weren't strong enough. Maybe he's just been trying to be the captain. It's another thing where the manager should have taken the responsibility and done that in the pre-season, just made him captain. They dragged that out. Maybe he thought that he had the responsibility of saying that the players are not doing well enough. And then he mentioned in another game that, he gets the blame for stuff when forwards should be scoring goals. There's a lot going on with him where I feel there's a lot of outside pressure. And I thought what we saw with him coming off yesterday, and I'm still not going to condone the fact that as captain of the football club, he responded like he did. I'm not going to, the fans in respects of booing him off, and they're saying they were booing him once they saw his gesture towards them. Yes, but the fact is that still as the captain, you've got you can't come off like that. And, I totally understand what he's been going through up to this point. But at the same time, I have to stick by my word in respects of, as the captain, you can't respond like that just because the fans
Can you understand his frustration?
Without a shadow of a doubt. Of course, listen, Chris, you're talking about somebody who my frustrations built up and burst out in a referee's room, blacked out, smashing it to bits. You know what I mean? He's somebody that, let's face it, in the time he's been at Arsenal, the games and the amount of games he's played, and people still say, what does he do? What does he bring to the team? He divides the Arsenal fan base, literally, in respects of what he contributes. And yesterday, with the Palace coming back like they did, because let's face it, if anyone says Arsenal have not played a decent game of football in respects of the fans being happy for a long time, and he may be somebody that they will look at. And again, the boss, Unai, picks him continually. And that is something else that will frustrate them, chappers. And yesterday, I think it all culminated with him coming off and reacting like he did. And you know what? To a certain extent, when you look at it 24 hours later, I feel for him because I know what he's going through. And then personally, him and his pregnant wife, for the abuse that they've had to take. And like I say, I'm not trying to make him the victim here, because I still don't believe that the way he came off was the way a captain should. But we've got to still understand what it's like to be a footballer in this day and age.
Would he have
council culture?
Would he have diffused the situation though? And I've not seen it today. If he would have just apologised this morning. Or did he? But I don't
you know
think
what?
he has
No,
apologised.
he's
But the
not
thing is,
apologised.
No,
we all know, is there been an apology?
No.
No.
Well, the thing about it is that the longer that takes, the more it's going to cause him problems, because fans have got every right to be frustrated, especially Arsenal fans with everything that's going on now. Don't know what's going on. The manager's got a lot to answer for in respects of the way the team's playing, players who are playing, players who are not playing, the performances, even Palace. Palace, you have to say with Palace, even going 2 down as early as they did, you could see that they were not worried in the slightest. You're looking at someone like Aubameyang and Lacazette, potent strikers on there. I'm not sure how many chances they had between them, maybe 2, maybe shots. Aubameyang had, Lacazette, maybe 3 or 4 shots. Not enough creativity. The manager's got a lot to answer for. But in respects of, like I say, with Xhaka, that for me was the tipping point for him, unfortunately.
I wonder whether, Jason, there are an awful lot more layers, I think, to this story and this incident than simply Arsenal captain being booed as he was substituted.
Definitely. No, I mean, I think Ian's analysis is right. I mean, I think there are an awful lot of things going on at the club at the moment which actually are creating a lot of mixed messages. And I think there's a lot of confusion at the club and from the players as well. They're not quite sure where they're heading now with Unai Emery. I think his English is an issue behind the scenes as well as publicly. I think we know his media conferences are very poor. We can't really understand what he's saying half the time. I think that is also happening behind the scenes. I think there are an awful lot of confusion as to what style of play they're trying to do, where the direction the club is heading in terms of the on-the-field, sort of what the players have been asked to do. I think that kind of is the captaincy thing is part of that. Obviously, the players have elected Xhaka captain. And I mean, I've come across this before. People were talking today as if it's like never happened before. I remember when Mourinho first took over at Chelsea, he was minded to make Frank Lampard the captain, but he let the players decide and they voted for John Terry. So it's not an unusual situation, but it's become part of an ongoing issue around Arsenal in terms of the kind of very confused atmosphere at the club, and the atmosphere at the club is important because, I've covered Arsenal a long, long time and it became incredibly toxic towards the end of Wenger for quite a long time. Yeah. And it's not taking very much to get back to that again. It's not really moved on from that. And I think the fans have also got to take a responsibility in this, to be honest with you, because Ian's used an interesting phrase there, talking about being a footballer in 2019, and he's absolutely right, because it's different now. I think the social media age has become very, very damaging to football players. I was talking to somebody the other day about this at a club, big club, and he said he was really worried about the kind of effect social media in particular is having on the players, because it's really getting into their heads. They can't help but look at it. Everyone always says they don't look at it. They don't look at the media and look at social media. They do. They look at it all the time. Yeah. But that's in the stadium, what's happened yesterday. And I felt uncomfortable with it. I felt it's overstepped the mark with the fans as well. I think you have this kind of, disconnect between supporting a team and feeling that you can basically abuse anyone and that anything goes now.
Jace, what about the fact that the fans will say it was only because...
Do you think it was only because
he was walking off slowly?
Okay, yeah, that provoked them, but they've given him quite a lot of abuse for quite a long time now. They've abused him quite a lot. He's the focus of a lot of discontent, and that's become worse because he got the captaincy.
Would they have booed Aubameyang off if he'd have strolled off like that?
No, but he's a more important player for them. He's a better player for them. They like him more. I understand all of that, but I think he's become too. I'm uncomfortable with how fierce the kind of the vitriol and the anger is now towards Xhaka.
We can't. I do always think, from a fan's point of view, if you give it out, you have to be able to take it back, don't you?
Absolutely.
I find it astonishing, actually, how more players don't do this and how more players manage to keep their calm with the abuse that comes.
I remember when
way.
I used to, back in the day, when I used to give it back, and I remember it only took 6 fans to be upset with to report you for the police. You know how many times I went back to the dressing room and I went in, 2 policemen are waiting outside. I said, I've just played a football match. What are you doing here? He said, yes, apparently there's been gestures from you, Mr. Wright. I said, you're bloody right, there's been gestures from me. I said, look at them, there's 10,000 of them there. What, 6 of them have complained?
Yeah.
Then they're absolutely beside themselves. I can't believe he's a professional footballer. He should not be reacting like that.
What would if you flipped it, what would the fans do in that position? What do you think they'd do? What he was wrong because he was Arsenal captain, but he was human.
Yeah.
I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
Would you have reacted?
Blimey, I used to get abused when I was going out for the warm-up before the game. When I was at Chelsea, so you just have to get used to it. You gave it to me when we came on air tonight.
Oh, but that was merely in jest. I mean,
the thing
it's
is,
not
it may be in your view.
Yeah,
but you know what?
It wasn't clear and obvious.
All jokes aside, though, chappers, what people don't understand, what the fans don't understand, is because they tend to use this money's earning and great life and stuff. You don't understand what it does to a player who is the butt of fans' like negativity. You've been in dressing rooms when you've seen what it happens to, and it's not just that player. It's the whole family. It's the family who has to sit in the crowd and listen to it. It's everybody. It's everything that gets the ripple effect that affects everyone. That is what made G.Xhka react like he did yesterday. I still will say, as a captain, I'd rather him not react like that and let people know what he's going through, not the people we caring. But maybe it takes something like this for people to understand what happens in this day and age.
The fans will say, we pay our money, though.
Yeah,
we
they
pay
do.
Good
Yeah,
money
but they do
to
say
watch
that.
Arsenal.
They do say that. And they do.
This is the Football Daily Podcast with Mark Chapman.
Let's move on to Liverpool against Tottenham next. What do you think's different about Liverpool at the moment, Jason?
Well, I mean, I think there's a real belief that they're going to win this league. I was at Anfield yesterday. They went 1 goal behind. It was tricky. They've made a whole lot of chances. Obviously, the goalkeeper had a fantastic performance, G.Xhka. But I always felt Liverpool would do it, even though they were playing against another top side. I thought they would just do enough to get over the line. And they did that. And I think there is that belief now in there that they are going to win this league. And they will just make sure they do that. And I think the winning the Champions League has given them that belief, really. More than finishing second last season. I think it's winning the Champions League has really sort of spurred them on to go on and now win this league. And I think there is that determination about them to make sure they get there by hook or by crook. And they're finding different ways to win games. It's not just about the front three. We saw that yesterday with the midfield. Fabinho was outstanding. Henderson scored the goal when he wasn't having a great game, by the way. And then he scored that goal. And obviously that changed things. And I think there just is that sort of sense around them at the moment. Almost like a force of nature in some ways, really. They're almost unstoppable. And, it was a strange performance by Tottenham because they set up very defensively, which isn't really like them. But they just couldn't repel them. They just could not keep them out. Yeah,
but it's the counter-attacking. And let's face it, though, Jay, the Son hitting the bar was massive.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
because as soon as he hits the bar, you think to yourself, "That's it."
That was the moment. Yeah,
you literally all think to yourself, "No, they're going to win this game." But like that's the luck. That's the luck you've got, and you put that alongside the experience of last season. What Liverpool went through, knowing that, I keep saying it, knowing that they're going into games and they think draws are not good enough.
Yes.
Because they believe that Manchester City will beat teams. They're going to have to continue to beat teams. And they're finding ways. Yeah. That's why, whatever we say, even with Jordan Henderson, for him to be pushed out onto that right-hand side, whether it is him or whatever, and then to come up with the goal, that is how you win leagues. Players like that, because you can see, you can feel like, he's not going to get into that midfield for the future of where Liverpool's going. So this may be the first knockings of the phasing out. And so he's coming out there. And I've got to say, with whatever you say about him and the way he's played and, the substitution appearances this season, he's been taken off, he's been dragged against United. And he gets on with it, is how you win leagues. Players like that help you win leagues.
Do you think, when you look at both teams, that with hindsight, it was the Champions League final was a defining moment for both sets of players and both managers, Chris?
No, I don't. I think that
you don't think it's a defining for Tottenham?
I do.
Well, Mark did ask me the question. You can answer if you like.
No.
Look, I think Liverpool was superb last season, all round. 97 points, pushed City. It was a freak that City won. I think in terms of Tottenham, look, they're in a bad place at the moment. But can they come again? Will they come again under Pochettino? I think they will. They're going through...
What makes you say that?
Because I think they have too many good players. But there are too many good players at the moment who are simply underperforming, and I do think it's as simple as that. They are leaking goals, something that over Pochettino's tenure they haven't seemed to do. But before this season, he'd had 5 years at Spurs, and those 5 years, all right, didn't win anything, but the club has improved as a whole. They've been pretty much immaculate. So for the sake of a couple of dodgy months. You cannot lose faith in your manager and what he's done for the club.
The Football Daily from BBC Sport and BBC 5 Live.
So let's do VAR then. In the first 90 Premier League games of the season, not a single penalty or red card was given by the system. This weekend, it awarded 4 penalties and a red card. One of the penalties was in the Brighton-Everton game when Michael Keane stepped on Aaron Connolly's foot. I actually spoke to Brighton's Glenn Murray on Sports Report after the game.
It seems to become a little bit farcical. I mean, even when I think Everton scored their second goal, we waited a minute or two before we could kick off again when the decision was being made. So, yeah, it's definitely slowing the game down.
And also, when it does go to VAR, how much communication is there between the official and you as a group of players? Alan's mentioned watching England-New Zealand in the World Cup semi-final this morning, and, how if you're listening and driving in, you hear everything. You hear everything that the referee is explaining to the players. When you're on the field, how much explanation are you getting, or are you in the dark as well?
We're as much in the dark as the fans are, and I also think the referee is, to be fair to him. I don't think he's got anything to say to us. He's telling us to wait on a decision from elsewhere, like he is as well.
If the people running VAR came to you, Chris, let's go to you first, and said, what should we do to improve this? What would you say?
I would say that the on-field referees have to take responsibility themselves, and that is what should start to happen. Because I was all for VAR, but after what happened at the weekend and Daniel James, the penalty at Norwich, I don't think that was a penalty. No. I don't think most people thought it was. The Chambers one. I mean, come on. I mean, it's so bad, and so that the whole mechanism is failing, and I'd rather go back to referees. I'd rather go back to no VAR and referees. It's that bad at the moment. Referees actually just refereeing the game, and if they're going to make mistakes,
Chris, it works around the world. Why aren't we taking notice of what people are doing around the world? It works. It does work, but we're just getting it wrong. We've got we've got a screen at the side of the pitch that they don't go to. That's just pure arrogance.
And that is the problem. And sort of, in my view, enough is enough. And I'll make a bit of a plea to the referees, really, to go and
to
look
Mike
at
Riley.
To go and look at the monitors. I've had a lot of time on my hands today, chappers, and I made an interesting comparison with referees and astronauts, and I may take you somewhere where no man has been before.
Okay.
And I hope the referees are listening, but just bear with us a little bit on this. VAR is on a mission, and if ever a referee deserved a chance to lead a mission and land on Mars, who would it be? Which referee would you choose?
Which one I'd want to send there? Mike Riley.
That'd be Mike Dean, wouldn't it? The Red Planet.
Yeah.
He's the king of the red cards, isn't he?
Just send Mike Riley there.
So you compare. I'm comparing an astronaut to a referee here. Now, an astronaut, if Mike Dean's taken off to go to Mars, an astronaut, he has to rely on technology and his backup team, back at base, just like a referee out on their own, solo. They have to rely on their backup team. Yeah, Han Solo, back at Stockley Park, don't they? So, I mean, it comes down to this. If you're a referee, if you're an astronaut and you have to make a critical decision.
Right.
Based on the knowledge which you have had from your backup team this season, would you want to rely on them or would you want to rely on yourself and the experience which you've had as a referee and the training and your instinct? I.e., forget what they're telling you. When you look at what has happened over the weekend, Daniel James, Callum Chambers, go and look at the monitor. go across and look at the monitor. It's as simple as that. It really is. That's not rocket science.
I'm tired.
Hey! I knew there'd be a reason for it at the end.
I just can't get my head around, Chappers, the fact that one thing for sure, Chappers, the fans don't know what's going on. That is something that they have to address that.
That's right.
People need to know what's going on in the state. You know what's happened is we've got to a stage now, Chappers, where we managers don't know. Managers are confused with it. Players are confused with it. Fans are confused with it. It's meant to be here to help.
Yeah, but
everybody's confused with it.
And I'd agree with that. But the crux of it is that what people can't understand. Why aren't the referees, after all what's happened, why are they not going across to make the final decision? The on-field referee has the last look based on the information which they've been given. It's tough information they've been given, and they are getting the criticism. So if I was a referee, if I'm Mike Dean, I would be thinking I need to take it into my own hands to make that decision because it's wrong. The information I've been getting is wrong. So therefore, they have to take responsibility, the on-field referees.
I bet that happens next weekend. I bet a referee goes over next weekend. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody will go over. I thought it would happen this weekend because of what happened the previous weekend. And what happened this weekend was we went from the high bar of the threshold to a low bar. So suddenly you get all these penalties and a red card when you hadn't had these subjective decisions before. And I think the next move towards that will be a referee will go over next weekend. We will see it next weekend. I'm pretty sure of that.
What's a high bar, Jason, and a low bar? I don't understand that. It should just be a bar.
Exactly. I know. Listen, I totally agree with you. They've made an absolute mess of it because they tried to have a situation where they didn't want the referees to feel they're being undermined. They didn't want the games to be re-refereed. They didn't want delays to happen, and all those things have happened because they've made a mess of it. They've been far too fearful of the consequences of explaining decisions to people, of letting the crowd know, of letting people know in the stadium what's going on, letting the players know what's going on, and they've made a total mess of it to the point that you're probably right. They should almost abandon it now and think we'll have another go at this next season because we've made an absolute mess of this season.
The time thing's quite interesting because we went back and looked at the two penalties that Manchester United were given against Norwich yesterday. In the office after the game yesterday. They looked at the Ben Godfrey challenge on Daniel James.
Didn't challenge him.
They looked at that instant. 18 replays they looked at. 18 different replays.
That's ridiculous.
It took 1 minute and 26 seconds. The second one took about a minute. And so 3 minutes of stoppage time was added on. I think what happens in that situation is if you are in the ground or a player and nobody is telling you anything, that 1 minute 26 feels like 4 minutes because you have no idea what is going on.
Chappers, I can't understand that whoever's looking at that, just like I cannot get the Deulofeu one out of my head. I can't because that's meant to be what VAR is for. And the same with that one yesterday. How you need to look at that. So now I'm calling into question the person who's doing it and what experience he's had in respects of looking at that and seeing that Daniel James is leaning into Godfrey. Godfrey has actually not made a challenge on him, and he's gone down, and they've looked at it 18 times.
If you look at it 18 times, it can't be clear and obvious.
And
yet we're now told clear and obvious. This is what we've been told this weekend, both on Saturday and Sunday.
That's clear and obvious. Obviously not a penalty for me.
Clear and obvious is subjective as well.
Well, exactly. One man's clear and obvious isn't the same as the next.
Subjective is the word they're using now.
Yes.
Because they didn't make subjective decisions before. I think there was one up until the previous weekend in 89 games. And then there was 2 last weekend, and now we've had a flurry of them this weekend, and we're going to have more and more subjective decisions because they basically the VAR hasn't worked in that way, and now they're going too far the other way, and it's becoming and those penalties that Manchester United got yesterday were given, I believe, because Deulofeu's wasn't given. And I think there's been a reaction to the Deulofeu incident.
And the on-field referee, and the Michael Keane one. The Michael Keane one was given because the David Silva one at Bournemouth wasn't given.
Exactly. I thought that was a penalty, though.
I know you
What
did.
one? What one?
The Michael Keane.
How's that penalty?
Because he stamped on his foot.
He didn't stamp on his
Yes, he
foot.
did.
You stamp on your foot. Well, you stamp on someone's
Wasn't
foot.
even
You're looking
looking
at where the foot is.
Well, he still stamped on his
He
foot.
didn't stamp on his foot on purpose. There's no intent. They've taken the word
he
intent
still
out.
brought him
It's
down.
ridiculous. He didn't bring him down.
He did, because he stamped on
He
his
was
foot.
looking at the ball. He wasn't looking at his foot because that's
He
where
still
the
brought him
intention.
down.
It was an intentional foul. Just like Chris Wood's one with Johnny Evans.
right.
That wasn't intentional.
Was it a foul?
No, it wasn't
If it
because
was
he didn't try to
outside-
foul
if it
him.
was
The foul is
outside
when
the-
you're trying
if-
to...
if it was outside the
I'll tell
box,
you what
would
was
it
a
have been a
foul.
foul?
I'll tell you what was a foul. Matty Guendouzi on Gilbert. That is what we need to see. That is clearly and obviously a foul.
I didn't think it was.
I thought but for me, Michael Keane, same with Chris Woods, and those for me, they've taken the word intent out. Those are that's and then to go back on the Callum Chambers one. If we're going back on that, man, come on, where are we going? What's going on?
To move on from VAR, do you think what happened with Michael Keane and the VAR between Brighton and Everton actually took the attention away from Everton rather capitulating in the last 15, 20 minutes of that game?
Yeah, but at the same time, Everton themselves should have had a penalty for me in that game. Because if we're talking about margins and small margins in respect of people being impeded, Richarlison was impeded in the box. So Everton have a case there for me. But in respect of Everton and Everton's team's good enough. Everton's team, they're making mistakes. I thought the goalkeeper was at fault. We saw Michael Keane unfortunately give away that penalty, which I thought was very, very harsh. But when you look at their team, and I just want to talk about Calvert-Lewin for a sec. People talk about but it's not a natural goal scorer. He came on yesterday and scored a goal, right? Well, I thought to myself, now that's as good and as taken with aplomb as I've ever seen anybody take a chance. Right now, they've got Gomez, they've got Gylfi Sigurdsson, they've got very good players, Richarlison. They're just not performing well enough. And for me, have a little bit more faith in someone like Calvert-Lewin. Give him a proper run. I've seen him hold up. I've seen him run his socks off for that team. And yesterday is one of the first times I've seen him in a situation where he's come off the bench, he's in an advanced position, they've put him through and he's slotted it brilliantly. Now that says to me they've got someone who can score. Are they playing to the strengths of what the players that they've got, rather than continuously talking about what they're not doing? Gomez, good player. Gylfi Sigurdsson, good player. Even Yerry Mina, good player. The goalkeeper can, for me, do better. Luca Dean, very good player. Seamus Coleman, consistent, very good player. Iwobi's still got, I like what Iwobi's doing. He's continuously getting better. But I feel that they're just not performing well. And maybe the manager's just not getting the best out of them. Personally, that's all I think with Everton.
Chris?
Yeah, I think they're massive underperformers. I was at the West Ham game, and that was a big game because I think before that the crowd were just starting to turn. Has spent over, I think, in his since he's been in charge, over £200 million altogether, over 100 million last summer, and performances haven't been good enough. When the pressure was off at the end of last season, they got a few decent victories, but this season has been a disaster. Having said that, I don't think they're 5 points off sixth place, I think, yet they're 2 points off the relegation zone. But there's no doubt Silva isn't getting the best out of the players, and there are major issues. And I think Pickford, I think he's under pressure, not necessarily for his Everton place, but for his England spot. I think there are other goalkeepers out there, and I'll give you one, the boy at Bournemouth, Ramsdale. Very competent keeper. And Pickford's got, I think he's got work to do and a lot to prove this season.
I like Nick Pope.
Nick Pope, Tom Heaton.
I like Tom Heaton.
Fraser Forster.
Why'd you say that?
He's playing well.
Is Fraser playing well?
Why is the deathly silence?
I don't know. I think it's just
Save of the season last week.
Where do you think, Jason, you could name Everton's first choice starting 11? And by the way, this isn't a comment.
Me to do it?
No, it's not it's not a comment on your knowledge of Everton or not. I just remember Kevin Kilban a few years ago, probably when it was under Roberto Martinez, and they had players like Kevin Morales, saying on a show like this that one of Everton's problems was they'd have a substitute who would come on for 15, 20 minutes, perform well, and then they'd start the following game. The player that they replace would then come on in that game for the last 10, 15 minutes, perform well, and would then start the next game and maybe then not deliver, and so on and so forth. Now, they maybe have more starters than they did back then, but I wonder whether there's still a clutch of players who are all very much of a muchness and don't nail down.
Is that not a result of having had quite a few managers over a quick period of time, having quite a lot of money to spend as well, and they've had quite a sort of churn of players. So he's almost got a little bit of a hodgepodge of what.
Although he himself has spent 185 million.
I know, absolutely, I know. Listen, I mean, I'll be quite honest. I know Marco Silva. I'm surprised how much he's struggling. I know how hard he's worked at it. I know what he's trying to do with the team. I know he's been frustrated that they didn't do a couple more bits of business last summer, but that happens with every manager. I think the centre-half was an issue for him. I think he wanted another centre-half, but they tried too hard to get Kurt Zouma when Chelsea weren't going to sell him. And then he got obsessed by an idea of another forward player, another striker. And I take Ian's point on Calvert-Lewin, but he obviously wanted another forward player. They ended up getting Iwobi. He wasn't quite what necessarily maybe what they wanted. So there's a little bit of that going on. The most important player in the team, I think, is Gomez. I think he's the one he really looks to in terms of being the kind of key player to sort of set the tempo for the team. And Luca Dean as well, obviously, has given them the captaincy recently. I don't quite understand why it's not worked for them. I look at that team and they are not the sum of their parts. They are better players than this, and he has to be a better manager than this, because I know enough about him to think that this is surprising me how it's gone with them. And there's been talk of people being unhappy behind the scenes, the dressing room and so on. But my understanding is that's not really true. I think there are a couple of players have been disenchanted about being out of the team. He works so incredibly hard. They do very long training sessions, and some players don't like that. But that's the reality. That he works them very, very hard. But then do you think
we're at that stage of a managerial career of? It feels like his future is going to be debated game by game now.
Yeah, I think so. I think tomorrow night is big. They play Watford, his former club. Carabao Cup is massive for Everton. They see it as an opportunity to win something. Obviously, clearly they want to be as high in the league as possible. And then you've got Tottenham on Sunday. I think if he goes out of the Cup and he loses to Tottenham, he's in huge trouble.
This is the Football Daily Podcast.
Jason, I'll ask you this one first. If the Brendan Rodgers Leicester team played the title-winning Leicester team, who would win?
I think the Brendan Rodgers team would win. Yeah, they're a better team. They're definitely a better team, play better football, score more goals, look more threatening. I think that's a fair point. I think what's happened, obviously, since Leicester won the league is the other teams obviously have raised the bar as well. I mean, they weren't against this Manchester City, they weren't against this Liverpool. But you look at Leicester right now, they're the third best team in the country. And they're pushing really hard for Champions League place. And at the moment, you'd say they will finish in that top four. I would be surprised if they don't.
And the thing about it is, Chappers, is that there's no accident about them being where they are. They're a very, very good team. What happened with them when they won the league, that the year before, they nearly went down. And then we didn't know anything about Kante. Mahrez, Vardy emerged like he did. Danny Drinkwater was magnificent. Albrighton, got to get credit, everything what they've done. So, you look at someone like Kante, Mahrez, and at the time, you'd have to say, Vardy, they were world-class performances that they were putting in. So when you look at, and so it was just like a flash of lightning what they were doing, and they took everybody by surprise. This team has got, this team is fantastic from back to front.
Chris?
I love hypothetical.
I know. I could hear how much you were laughing, and probably that didn't come to you first.
Nice one. He would have answered it anyway,
what you've basically done is, because they beat Southampton 9-0, that sort of skewers everything, doesn't it? They're scoring 2.5 goals a game. I think when they won the league, that was 1.8. So they're doing better in that respect. They're conceding less. But Leicester City winning the Premier League, it was impossible. The team they did it with. You look at the money that Leicester have spent, and they've spent it very wisely. But we can't have a hypothetical argument who would win.
Why not?
That team were phenomenal, and probably the difference in it all would be, and you've named him, Kante. Yeah. Kante was the difference. They've still got Schmeichel. They've still got Vardy. They're great to watch, but it's 10 games. We're premature.
Yeah, but it's nice to think about it.
Well, not after 10 games. Let's wait till after 20 games.
All right, it doesn't.
You're so boring.
It obviously does come off the back of a 9-0 win at Southampton, but that's not their only impressive performance over the course of this season so far, Chris.
No, it's absolutely not. They thumped Newcastle.
Yeah.
But
they were
they've
brilliant
come up
against Chelsea.
Yeah, they
didn't
were. But I think we're talking about the style of football, aren't we? As much as anything, and they are great on the eye. And all teams, teams which Brendan Rodgers has managed have been, very good on the eye. But ultimately, for Leicester to win the league with the players which they had, that was a one-off. It was a phenomenon.
It was a what? What was it?
Write it down phonetically.
But in the end...
No, what was it?
Phenomenon.
I've
said
tried
it for
3
you.
times. Rightly did it. But they're not going to win the league this season, are they, Leicester?
Yeah, but people said they weren't going to win the league when they won the league. How can you just say that?
So do you think Leicester will win the league this season?
Before Norwich played Man City, did you say that? Would you say Norwich could beat Man City? You can't say that with football. Of course they can win the league.
So they can win the league.
Of course they can win the league. If Manchester City and Liverpool slip up, and you have to say, well, what teams in and around it that could take advantage with the experience that they've got and the manager and the way they're playing consistently? What's people think? Oh, it's going to be Ian Wright says Leicester can win the league. Of course they can win the league. Whether they do it or not.
I can't believe you've tipped them.
That's what will make the papers tomorrow, because that's what people love. But don't write them off. Never write them off.
I've written them off. They can't win the league. They can't win the league.
Yeah, but you can't say that.
I can.
You're talking about a club that's done that. From the start, people say, oh, it's a great start for Leicester. Yeah, but they never win the league. They come Christmas, but they're not going to finish it. They could win the league. Oh, they've won the league. Come on. Jesus, that's how it went.
What you would say, though, Jason, was the side that won the league, that was a definitive one season. And actually, I know they did do well in the Champions League the following year.
Yeah.
But you actually look at this team.
Younger.
And the potential of it is greater.
Definitely. You look at players like Maddison, Harvey Barnes, they're young players, Ben Chilwell. Yeah. They're players who will only probably get better as well.
Tielemans as well. We've got to mention Tielemans, man.
And Tielemans as well, absolutely. I mean, you look through that team, there's an awful lot of young talent that's only going to get better, and under a manager like Brendan Rodgers as well. I mean, I think they're a very, very exciting team. They've done a phenomenal job, Leicester, in the way they've remodeled themselves. Their recruitment has been fantastic. It's been absolutely superb after a very rocky period post winning the league and Ranieri going. It was a bit difficult for a while.
Steve Walsh going,
obviously, then Puel and so on, and Shakespeare. And now look where they are now. They're in such a strong position. They have recruited so well. They've brought in players that they've. If they sell Harry Maguire and they bring in Sonchu, it's a better defence without Harry Maguire. It's incredible what they've done.
They've got ambitions to win this league, and you can look at someone like Brendan Rodgers.